What's your rank, sweetheart? Oh, right. Trash doesn't get a rank.
Grant Mercer ripped her name tag off, tossed it on the floor.
Pick it up. On your knees. That's your rank!
Lauren didn't move. He shoved a champagne glass into her hand.
Your new rank, waitress. Smile and serve.
The room laughed. Someone yelled,
She outranks the dishwasher! People like you don't earn ranks.
He sneered.
You earn
mops.
Now crawl back to whatever gutter gave you that cheap suit before I...
Lauren set the glass down. A soft click. The doors opened. 4 generals walked in, stopped before Lauren, saluted.
Ma'am!
Nobody breathed. Mercer's face went white. None of them knew the woman he called Sweetheart held the highest rank in that room and the power to end every career in it. Joint Base Harlow sat on 43 acres of flat Virginia land, 3 runways, 2 hangars big enough to swallow commercial jets, a compound where special operations units from every branch trained, planned, and answered to no one but themselves. On the morning of October 14th, the base was buzzing. Word had come down 48 hours earlier. A senior inspection delegation was arriving. No one knew the lead inspector's name. No one had seen a photo. The official memo said only, Office of the Inspector General, Command Climate Review. 3 words that made commanding officers lose sleep. Captain Gerald Sullivan, the base commander, had spent 2 days scrubbing. Not the floors, the paperwork. Complaint files got moved to a locked cabinet in his private office. Incident logs from the past 18 months were under review, which meant buried. He told his staff to smile, answer questions briefly, and volunteer nothing. This is a routine visit, Sullivan told his officers that morning. Show them professionalism. Show them pride. And for God's sake, keep Mercer on a leash. Nobody laughed. They all knew why. Lieutenant Grant Mercer was the unit's golden boy. 29 years old, 2 deployments, a Silver Star nomination pending. He walked through hallways like he owned them, spoke to junior enlisted like they were furniture. And no one, not Sullivan, not the senior chiefs, not anyone, ever corrected him. Because Mercer delivered results, and results bought silence. That afternoon, the reception hall filled. White tablecloths, champagne flutes lined up on silver trays, officers in dress uniforms, enlisted personnel working the event in pressed whites. Among them was Petty Officer 3rd Class Danielle Hale, 22, 2 years on base. She carried a tray of glasses through the crowd, head down, eyes forward. She had learned to be invisible here. It was safer. The lieutenant commander grabbed a glass from her tray without looking at her. Fine. Normal. Then he turned to his colleague and said, loud enough for Hale to hear, "They'll let anyone serve at these things now. Lower the standards every year." Hale's jaw tightened. She kept walking. No one noticed. No one cared. That was the culture at Harlow. If you were junior, female, or black, you kept your mouth shut and your head down. Complaints went to Sullivan's office. Sullivan's office was where complaints went to die. At 4:47 p.m., a dark sedan pulled up to the base gate. No escort vehicles, no flags, just a single car with government plates. Lauren Brooks stepped out. Gray suit, no ribbons, no insignia, a worn leather notebook tucked under her left arm. She looked like a contractor, maybe a military spouse who'd taken a wrong turn. That was the point. Major Karen Whitman, her aide, had argued against it. Ma'am, they won't know who you are. Protocol requires—" "I know what protocol requires," Brooks had said. "I want to see what they do when they think no one important is watching." She walked through the main gate alone, showed a standard DODID. The gate guard glanced at it, glanced at her, and waved her through without a second look. Inside the reception hall, Brooks took a position near the back wall. She didn't introduce herself, didn't reach for champagne. She watched. She watched Sullivan shake hands and check his watch every 2 minutes. She watched officers cluster by rank, ignoring the enlisted staff moving between them like ghosts. She watched a young black woman carrying a tray get bumped by a passing officer. The glasses rattled. The officer didn't turn around. The woman steadied the tray with both hands, exhaled, and kept moving. Brooks opened her notebook, wrote something, closed it. Then she heard the laughter. Across the room, a crowd had formed. At the center stood a young lieutenant in dress whites, broad shoulders, easy grin, the kind of confidence that fills a room and sucks the air out of it at the same time. Grant Mercer had found his next target, and she was standing right by the door. Lauren had been watching the room for 11 minutes when he spotted her. She was standing near the back wall between a folded American flag in a glass case and a portrait of a retired admiral. Gray suit, no ribbons, no insignia. She held nothing but a leather notebook. She could have been anyone: a government contractor, a visitor's wife, a lost civilian. Grant Mercer noticed her the way a hawk notices movement on the ground. Not because she was important, because she was different. He nudged the officer next to him. "Who let her in?" The officer shrugged. Mercer straightened his dress whites and crossed the room. 4 officers trailed behind him like a small parade. He didn't walk. He strutted. Chin up, shoulders rolling. Every step said the same thing: "This is my house." He stopped 2 feet from Lauren. "Excuse me." His voice carried across the hall. Conversations nearby went quiet. "You look a little lost. This event is for military personnel. Actual military personnel." Lauren looked at him, calm, steady. "I'm where I need to be." Mercer smiled. Not a kind smile, the kind of smile that precedes a public execution. "Is that right?" He turned to his audience. They were already watching. "She says she's where she needs to be." A few chuckles. He turned back. "What's your rank, sweetheart?" "Oh, right. Trash doesn't get a rank." The words landed like a slap. Lauren's expression didn't change. Not a flinch, not a blink. That bothered him. People always flinched. Junior enlisted flinched. Contractors flinched. Even officers 2 ranks below him flinched when Mercer turned on the charm. This woman stood there like stone. So he pushed harder. He reached for her name tag, a simple adhesive visitor badge stuck to her lapel, and ripped it off. Held it between 2 fingers like it was something dirty. "Lauren." He read it aloud, pronouncing each syllable with exaggerated disgust. "No last name, no rank, just Lauren. You know what that tells me?" He let the badge fall to the marble floor. "Pick it up. On your knees. That's your rank." The room didn't gasp. That was the worst part. The room adjusted. A few officers looked away. Most didn't. Some raised their phones. Sullivan, standing 30 feet away with a champagne flute, saw the whole thing. He took a sip and turned to greet a contractor. Lauren didn't pick up the badge. She didn't look at it. She looked at Mercer. "Are you done?" she asked. Quiet. Not angry, not scared. Just a question. Mercer's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being asked questions. He was used to people answering his. He grabbed a champagne glass from a passing tray, Hale's tray. Hale froze for a half-second, eyes darting between Mercer and the woman. She recognized the look on Mercer's face. She'd seen it before. Aimed at her. Mercer pushed the glass into Lauren's hand, not gently. The crystal pressed hard against her palm. "Your new rank. Waitress. Smile and serve. That's all women like you are good for." Someone behind him laughed. Then more laughter. It rippled through the group like a wave, growing louder, feeding on itself. A lieutenant commander raised his glass in a mock toast. "She outranks the dishwasher." The laughter peaked. Lauren held the champagne glass for exactly 3 seconds. Then she placed it on the nearest table, carefully, precisely, the way someone handles evidence. She opened her notebook and wrote something. Mercer watched her write. For the first time, something flickered behind his eyes. Not fear, not yet. Confusion. Why was she writing? Who writes things down at a party? He buried the thought. "You know what your problem is?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the bourbon on his breath. "You think showing up in a cheap suit makes you somebody. It doesn't. You're nobody. You're less than nobody." His voice dropped. The officers behind him leaned in. "People like you don't earn ranks. You earn mops. You earn toilet brushes. You earn the privilege of cleaning up after men like me." He gestured around the room. "Every person in this room has bled for this country. And you walked in off the street, like a stray dog looking for scraps." Lauren closed the notebook. "Do you talk to everyone like this?" she asked. "Only the ones who don't belong." "And who decides who belongs?" Mercer spread his arms wide. "I do. Look around. You see anyone here who looks like you?" The question hung in the air. He was right in the worst possible way. Lauren was the only black woman in the room who wasn't carrying a tray. Hale stood 6 feet away, frozen, holding her serving tray with white knuckles. She had heard every word. She had lived every word. Different day, different man, same script. 2 months ago, a senior chief had told her she was only here because of quotas. She'd filed a complaint. Sullivan's office had responded with a form letter. Matter reviewed, no action required. No action required. The 3 words that kept Harlow exactly the way it was. Mercer wasn't finished. He never was. "I'm going to give you 10 seconds to walk out that door," he said. "And if you don't, I'll have security escort you out. And trust me, sweetheart, they won't be gentle about it." He held up his hand and started counting on his fingers. 10, 9, 8. Lauren didn't move. 7, 6, 5. The officers behind him joined in, a chorus, like a countdown at a football game, like this was entertainment. 4, 3, 2. Lauren looked past Mercer, past the laughing officers, past Sullivan, pretending not to see. She looked at Hale. Their eyes met for one full second. Hale saw something in the woman's face that she couldn't name. Not anger, not humiliation. Something deeper. Something that looked like a promise. "1," Mercer said. He dropped his hand. "Time's up. Get out." Lauren didn't get out. She reached down, picked up her visitor badge from the marble floor, and placed it in her notebook. Then she closed the notebook, tucked it under her arm, and stood exactly where she was. The room went quiet. The countdown energy evaporated. Something had shifted. Mercer could feel it even if he couldn't identify it. The woman wasn't leaving. She wasn't crying. She wasn't calling for help. She was waiting. And that, more than anything, unsettled him. "Fine," Mercer said. His voice had lost half its volume. "Your funeral." He turned his back on her and walked toward the bar. His entourage followed, but slower now. A few of them glanced back. One of them, a young ensign, looked like he wanted to say something. He didn't. Sullivan checked his watch. 4:58 p.m. The delegation was supposed to arrive at 5. His phone buzzed. A text from the gate guard. "Delegation vehicles approaching. 4 stars confirmed. ETA 2 minutes." Sullivan straightened his tie, took a breath, put on his best commanding officer face. He had no idea that the delegation's lead inspector was already inside the building, had been for the last 14 minutes, and had just filled 3 pages of her notebook with everything she needed. At exactly 5 p.m., the double doors at the far end of the reception hall swung open. The noise hit first. Boot heels on marble. Synchronized. Sharp. The kind of sound that makes every spine in a room straighten on instinct. A protocol officer appeared in the doorway. Young. Nervous. His voice cracked on the first word. "Attention on deck." The room snapped. Conversations died. Glasses froze halfway to lips. Every officer turned toward the door. 4 generals entered. Major General Ellen Carter, Major General Daniel Foster, Brigadier General Thomas Reed, Brigadier General Howard Wilson. Each one in full dress uniform. Each one wearing enough stars and ribbons to wallpaper a small office. They walked in a line. Not fast, not slow. The pace of people who don't need to rush because the world waits for them. Sullivan stepped forward, hand extended. "Generals, welcome to Joint Base Harlow. We've prepared." Carter walked past him. Foster walked past him. Reed walked past him. Wilson walked past him. Sullivan's hand hung in the air like a forgotten question. His mouth stayed open. No sound came out. The 4 generals crossed the reception hall in silence. Every eye in the room followed them. Mercer stood near the bar, champagne glass in hand, watching with mild curiosity. This was the inspection team. Fine. He'd seen generals before. They came, they toured, they left. Nothing ever changed. Then they stopped. They stopped in front of the woman in the gray suit. Major General Carter, a woman with 31 years of service and a reputation for breaking careers the way other people break bread, squared her shoulders, locked her eyes forward, and saluted. "General Brooks, the command is ready for your inspection, ma'am." Foster saluted. Reed saluted. Wilson saluted. 4 generals, 4 salutes, aimed at the woman Grant Mercer had told to get on her knees. The silence that followed wasn't the polite kind. It was the kind that comes before a building collapses, the kind where everyone in the room simultaneously realizes that the ground beneath them has been hollow this whole time. Mercer's champagne glass tilted. Liquid ran over his fingers. He didn't notice. His brain was doing math it couldn't solve. The woman, the guy's suit. No ribbons, no insignia. General Brooks, 3 stars, Lieutenant General, the Inspector General of the United States Army. The woman he had called trash. The woman he had told to pick up her badge on her knees. The woman he had counted down like a stray dog being chased from a yard. She outranked every single person in the room. She outranked him by a distance so vast it didn't have a name. Lauren Brooks returned the salutes, one crisp motion. Then she opened her notebook, the same notebook she had been writing in for the past 14 minutes, and turned to Sullivan. Captain Sullivan, I'll need your conference room, your complaint files from the past 24 months, and every incident report filed under your command. All of them, not the ones you selected. Sullivan's face lost its color in stages. First the cheeks, then the forehead, then the lips. He looked like a man watching his career leave his body. Ma'am, we weren't informed that you would be arriving before the... That's correct. Brooks closed her notebook. You weren't informed. That was the point. She turned to Major Whitman, who had entered behind the generals carrying a leather briefcase. Major, set up in the conference room. Pull personnel files for all senior staff. Start with the commanding officer and work down. Yes, ma'am. Brooks looked at the room one more time. Her gaze swept across the officers, the enlisted staff, the phones that had been recording, the champagne glasses, the silver trays. She looked at Mercer. He couldn't meet her eyes. She looked at Hale. Hale was shaking. Not from fear, from something else entirely. This is not a courtesy visit, Brooks said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. This is a formal command climate inspection under the authority of the Inspector General. Every person in this room is subject to interview. Cooperation is expected. Candor is required. She paused. I've been here for 14 minutes. I've seen enough to know this inspection will not be brief. She walked toward the hallway. The 4 generals followed. Whitman followed. The protocol officer scrambled to keep up. The reception hall stood frozen. Mercer put his glass down. His hand was wet. His fingers were trembling. The lieutenant commander who had toasted, "She outranks the dishwasher," was staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow him. Sullivan pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so badly it took 3 attempts to unlock it. He needed to call the JAG office. He needed to call his superior. He needed to call someone, anyone. But deep down, Gerald Sullivan knew something that none of his phone calls could fix. The woman in the gray suit had already seen everything. She had watched him watch Mercer humiliate her. She had watched him take a sip of champagne and turn away, and she had written it all down. Word travels fast on a military base. It travels faster when the word is catastrophic. By 5:14 p.m., 14 minutes after the 4 generals saluted a woman in a gray suit, Every building on Joint Base Harlow knew. The story moved through hallways, barracks, and break rooms like an electrical current. Each retelling added voltage. Mercer told her to get on her knees. He called her trash. She's a 3-star, Inspector General. He's done. He's absolutely done. In the senior enlisted lounge, a Master Chief set down his coffee mug and said 3 words. God help us. He wasn't talking about Mercer. He was talking about all of them. Because command climate inspections don't target one person. They target the system that created that person. Every policy ignored, every complaint buried. Every leader who saw something wrong and decided it wasn't their problem. Mercer was a symptom. Harlow was the disease. And Lauren Brooks had come to cut it open. In the conference room on the 2nd floor, Brooks worked with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. Major Whitman set up a secure laptop on the long oak table. 2 JAG officers, Lieutenant Colonel Sandra Howell and Major Patrick Avery, arrived within 20 minutes carrying boxes of blank interview forms and recording equipment. Brooks stood at the head of the table. The 4 generals sat along one side, Whitman and the JAG team on the other. Here's what we know, Brooks said. She opened her notebook to the first page. I entered the facility at 4:47 p.m. in civilian attire with a standard visitor badge. Over the next 14 minutes, I observed the following. She read from her notes. Calm, methodical, like a surgeon describing an X-ray. Item 1. A lieutenant commander made a derogatory remark about enlisted serving staff within earshot of the staff member. No correction from any officer present. Item 2. The base commanding officer, Captain Gerald Sullivan, was present during a sustained verbal assault on a visitor and took no action. Item 3. Lieutenant Grant Mercer publicly harassed, demeaned, and attempted to forcibly remove a person he believed to be a civilian using language consistent with racial and gender-based discrimination. Item 4. Multiple officers and enlisted personnel witnessed the incident. None intervened. Several recorded it on personal devices. Item 5. The overall command atmosphere suggested a pattern, not an isolated incident. She closed the notebook. I want personnel files for all officers ranked 03 and above. I want every formal and informal complaint filed in the last 24 months. I want access to Sullivan's command logs, disciplinary records, and equal opportunity reports. And I want them unredacted. Major General Carter leaned forward. What about the phones? Several people were recording. Confiscate and preserve, Brooks said. Those recordings are evidence now. 3 floors below, Grant Mercer sat alone in the men's locker room. He hadn't changed out of his dress whites. He sat on a wooden bench with his forearms on his knees, staring at the gray tile floor. His phone was in his hand. He had typed and deleted the same text message 4 times. The text was to his father, a retired Navy captain, who had once told him, "The day you stop being the loudest voice in the room is the day you lose." Mercer had always been the loudest voice. He had built his identity on it. In BUD/S training, he was the one who screamed through the pain while others quit in silence. On deployment, he was the one who cracked jokes in firefights. In the officers' mess, he was the one whose stories got the biggest laughs. Loudness had always been rewarded. Until today. He kept replaying the moment. 4 generals, 4 salutes. The woman's face, not angry, not smug, not even satisfied, just calm. The same calm she had shown when he ripped off her badge. The same calm she had shown when he called her trash. The same calm she had shown when he counted down from 10. She had known the entire time. Every word he said, every insult he chose, every laugh he squeezed from the room. She had absorbed it, cataloged it, and written it in that notebook like a scientist recording the behavior of something under glass. He wasn't a warrior in that room. He was a specimen. His phone buzzed. A message from his platoon chief. CO wants all SEALs in quarters. No one leaves the building. Inspection team is pulling files. Mercer put the phone down. He pressed his palms against his eyes. Behind the darkness he could still see her face, still hear her voice. "Are you done?" 2 words. She had only needed 2 words, and they were louder than anything he had ever said in his life. On the other side of the base, Petty Officer 3rd Class Danielle Hale sat on the edge of her rack in the enlisted barracks. Her roommate, a logistics specialist named Tammy Noonan, was talking fast. "It's all over the base. The woman Mercer went after? She's a lieutenant general. 3 stars. Inspector General." "She's pulling files. She's interviewing people." "I know," Hale said quietly. "Did you see it? Were you there?" "I was serving champagne." Noonan stopped. "Oh my God. You saw the whole thing." Hale nodded. She was thinking about the moment their eyes met. Lauren Brooks looking at her across the room. 1 second, maybe less. But in that second, Hale had felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years at Harlow. Seen. Not glanced at. Not looked through. Seen. She pulled open the bottom drawer of her desk. Under a stack of old training manuals, there was a manila folder. Inside the folder were copies of 3 complaints she had filed over the past 18 months. The first was about the senior chief who told her she was a quota hire. Response: matter reviewed, no action required. The second was about a group of petty officers who left a mop outside her berthing door with a note that said, "Your real assignment." Response: no response at all. The complaint had been marked received and never updated. The third was about Mercer himself. 8 months ago, he had walked past her station, looked her up and down, and said, "They keep lowering the bar." She had filed the complaint that afternoon. Sullivan's office responded in 3 days. Insufficient evidence of hostile intent. Case closed. Hale held the folder in both hands. She had kept these copies because something inside her, some stubborn, unbreakable part, refused to let them disappear completely. Now she had a decision to make. If the inspection team asked her to speak, she could say nothing, keep her head down, survive the way she had always survived at Harlow. Or she could open this folder. She looked at the door. She looked at the folder. She thought about the woman in the gray suit who stood still while a room full of warriors tried to break her with words. That woman hadn't flinched. Hale closed the drawer, but she didn't put the folder back inside. She set it on top of her desk. The investigation began at 5:31 p.m., and it did not stop for 11 hours. Brooks set 3 rules for her team before the first interview. Rule 1. Every conversation would be recorded with the subject's knowledge. Rule 2. No subject would be interviewed with their commanding officer present. Rule 3. Start at the bottom and work up. The people with the least rank had the most to say and the most to lose by saying it. Major Whitman brought the first interviewee into the conference room at 5:40 p.m., a young seaman apprentice who worked in the mailroom. He sat across from Brooks with his hands folded so tightly his knuckles were white. "Relax," Brooks said. This isn't a court-martial. I just need to understand what daily life looks like on this base. The seaman swallowed. It's fine, ma'am. Everything's fine. Is it? Silence. Let me ask it differently. When was the last time you saw someone treated unfairly and nobody did anything about it? The seaman looked at the recorder. He looked at the JAG officer. He looked at Brooks. Today, he said, in the reception hall, but also before today. That was the first crack. It would not be the last. Over the next 4 hours, Brooks and her team interviewed 19 people, junior enlisted, mid-grade petty officers, a handful of junior officers. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in a dark room, slowly at first, then all at once. The stories were different. The shape was the same. A female petty officer, second class, described being told by a senior chief that she was taking a spot from someone who earned it. She filed a complaint. The complaint was acknowledged. Nothing happened. A black lieutenant junior grade described being passed over for a training slot that went to a less qualified officer. He asked why. His department head told him to focus on what you can control. He filed a complaint. The complaint was acknowledged. Nothing happened. A Latino chief petty officer described overhearing a group of officers joking about the diversity hires in the break room. He reported it to Sullivan's executive officer. The XO told him the officers were just blowing off steam. No complaint was filed because the XO never gave him the form. Each story was a thread. Together, they formed a rope. And the rope led straight to the same door, Captain Gerald Sullivan's office. Brooks kept her face neutral through every interview. She took notes. She asked follow-up questions. She thanked each person for their candor. But inside, a pressure was building. Not anger. Brooks had learned long ago that anger was a luxury an inspector couldn't afford. What she felt was colder, more precise. It was the steady recognition that she was looking at a command structure that had been rotting from the top for years, and everyone below had been breathing the rot and calling it normal. At 9:15 p.m., Major Whitman knocked on the conference room door. "Ma'am, there's a Petty Officer 3rd Class Danielle Hale requesting to speak with the inspection team. She says she has documentation." Brooks looked up from her notes. She remembered the young woman, the serving tray, the white knuckles, the 1 second of eye contact across the reception hall. "Send her in." Hale entered the conference room, carrying the manila folder against her chest like a shield. She sat down across from Brooks, placed the folder on the table, and didn't open it. "Take your time," Brooks said. Hale took a breath, then another. Then she opened the folder. "I've filed 3 formal complaints over the past 18 months, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were not. "I kept copies of all of them, every form, every response, every email." She spread the documents across the table. The first complaint, the senior chief who called her a quota hire, filed March of the previous year. Response from Sullivan's office dated 11 days later. Matter reviewed, no action required. 4 words. No explanation, no follow-up interview, no contact with the accused. The second complaint, the mop left outside her berthing door with a note reading, "Your real assignment," filed July. The complaint was logged into the system and marked received. It was never updated. No response was ever sent. Hale had followed up twice by email. Both emails went unanswered. The third complaint, Mercer telling her, "They keep lowering the bar," filed November. Sullivan's office responded in 3 days, faster than either of the previous complaints. Insufficient evidence of hostile intent. Case closed. 3 sentences. No interview with witnesses. No interview with Mercer. Case closed. Brooks read each document. She read them slowly. She read them the way someone reads a letter from a world they already knew existed, but hoped they were wrong about. "Petty Officer Hale," Brooks said, "when you filed the third complaint, the one about Lieutenant Mercer, did anyone from the command contact you afterward?" "No, ma'am." "Did anyone interview Mercer about the incident?" "Not that I know of, ma'am." "Did anyone tell you why the case was closed after 3 days?" "No, ma'am. I just got the email. Case closed. That was it." Brooks placed the documents back in the folder. She looked at Hale the way she had looked at her in the reception hall. Direct, unhurried, completely present. "Did you ever consider not coming here tonight?" Hale nodded. "Yes, ma'am, for about an hour." "What changed your mind?" Hale paused. She looked down at her hands. They had stopped trembling. "You stood there," Hale said quietly. "He said everything he could think of to make you small, and you just stood there. You didn't yell. You didn't cry. You didn't leave." She looked up. "I've been leaving for 2 years. I figured maybe it was time to stand." Brooks held her gaze for a long moment. Then she turned to Lieutenant Colonel Howell. "Enter Petty Officer Hale's complaint records into the investigation file. Flag all 3 for failure to follow AR 600-20 complaint processing procedures. And note that Petty Officer Hale cooperated voluntarily and without any promise of outcome." "Yes, ma'am." Brooks looked at Hale one more time. "Thank you, Petty Officer. What you did tonight took more courage than most people in this building will ever understand." Hale stood, nodded, and walked out. She made it to the hallway before the tears came. Not sad tears, the kind that come when you've been holding something so long you forgot how heavy it was. At 10:42 p.m., it was Mercer's turn. He entered the conference room in his service uniform. No dress whites now, no entourage, no champagne glass. Just a man in a chair across a table from the woman he had tried to humiliate 6 hours earlier. Brooks didn't mention the reception. She didn't need to. "Lieutenant Mercer, are you aware of a complaint filed against you by Petty Officer 3rd Class Danielle Hale approximately 8 months ago?" Mercer blinked. Vaguely. It was dismissed." "It was closed. There's a difference. Were you ever interviewed about that complaint?" "No, ma'am." "Were you ever informed that a complaint had been filed?" "I heard about it, through the chain." "Through the chain. Not through a formal notification process." Mercer shifted in his seat. "I don't recall a formal notification, no." Brooks made a note. "Let's talk about today. In the reception hall, you approached a woman you believed to be a civilian. Can you describe what happened?" "I asked her if she was in the right place." "Is that all you did?" Silence. "Lieutenant, there are multiple recordings of the interaction on personal devices that are currently being reviewed by my team. I would encourage accuracy." Mercer's jaw worked. His eyes dropped to the table. "I was out of line." "Describe what out of line looked like." Another silence. Longer this time. "I made comments. About her appearance, her belonging. I used language that was inappropriate. You called her trash. You told her to get on her knees. You told her that women like her scrub toilets. You initiated a group countdown to pressure her to leave. Is that accurate? Each sentence landed like a brick on Mercer's chest. He could feel the weight stacking. Yes, ma'am. And at any point during this interaction, did any officer in the room intervene? No, ma'am. Did Captain Sullivan intervene? No, ma'am. Was Captain Sullivan present? Mercer hesitated. Loyalty and survival fought a brief, ugly war behind his eyes. Survival won. Yes, ma'am. He was present. Brooks wrote in her notebook. She didn't look up when she spoke next. Lieutenant, I'm not here to end your career over a single incident. I'm here because a single incident revealed the command climate that allowed it to happen, and has been allowing similar things to happen for a long time. Do you understand the difference? Mercer nodded. He looked like a man who had just been told the difference between a crack in a wall and a crack in a foundation. You're dismissed for now. Remain on base and available. Mercer stood. He walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Brooks spoke again. Lieutenant, he turned. The next time you ask someone what their rank is, consider that you might not want the answer. Mercer left without a word. Sullivan's interview began at 11:30 p.m. It lasted 47 minutes. It did not go well. Brooks placed Hale's 3 complaint files on the table. She placed the incident logs that Whitman had retrieved from Sullivan's locked cabinet. She placed printed screenshots from 4 phone recordings of the reception hall incident. Sullivan looked at the table the way a man looks at a shallow grave. Captain Sullivan, your command has processed 31 equal opportunity complaints in 24 months. Of those 31, 28 were closed with no action required. 2 were referred to the next level, both under external pressure from congressional inquiries. 1 is still pending. Can you explain that ratio? Sullivan attempted an explanation. He used words like context and nuance and operational tempo. He said his team took every complaint seriously. He said he trusted his chain of command to handle issues at the lowest level. Brooks listened. She let him finish. Then she opened her notebook. At 4:52 p.m. today, I was standing in your reception hall. One of your officers publicly called a visitor trash, told her to get on her knees, and attempted to have her removed from the building. You were standing approximately 30 feet away. You saw it, you heard it, and you took a sip of champagne and turned your back. She closed the notebook. That is not context. That is not nuance. That is command failure. Sullivan opened his mouth. Nothing useful came out. This interview is concluded, Brooks said. You will be informed of the inspection findings through your chain of command. I'd recommend you begin thinking carefully about your next conversation with the Judge Advocate General. Sullivan stood. His legs didn't quite cooperate. He steadied himself on the back of the chair and walked out slowly, like a man leaving a doctor's office after very bad news. The door closed behind him. Brooks sat alone in the conference room for a full minute. She looked at the stack of files on the table. 31 complaints. 28 dismissed. 3 of them from a 22-year-old petty officer who kept copies in a manila folder under her training manuals because she knew that the system wouldn't keep them for her. Brooks opened her notebook to a clean page. At the top, she wrote 2 words: systemic failure. Then she picked up her phone and called Washington. The inspection report landed on the Secretary of the Army's desk 11 days later. 47 pages, 12 appendices, 106 footnotes. It was the kind of document that ends quietly and destroys loudly. Brooks had titled it Command Climate Assessment, Joint Base Harlow, Special Operations Compound. But inside the Pentagon, people called it something shorter: the Harlow Report. The findings were organized into 3 tiers. Tier 1, individual misconduct. Tier 2, leadership failure. Tier 3, systemic dysfunction. Most inspection reports had 1 tier, maybe 2. 3 tiers meant the rot went all the way down to the foundation. The consequences came in waves. The first wave hit Grant Mercer. On October 28th, 14 days after the reception, Mercer received formal notification of non-judicial punishment under Article 15 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The charges: conduct unbecoming an officer, violation of equal opportunity regulations, and failure to maintain standards of professional conduct. He was not court-martialed. Brooks had been clear about that distinction in her report. Lieutenant Mercer's behavior, while egregious, is a product of a command environment that consistently rewarded aggression and penalized dissent. Individual punishment without systemic reform addresses the symptom, not the disease. But the symptoms still carried consequences. Mercer was suspended from his SEAL team. His Silver Star nomination was withdrawn. He was reassigned to an administrative post at a training facility in Mississippi, the kind of assignment that has no glory, no deployments, and no audience. He would spend the next 18 months behind a desk processing paperwork for the same kind of junior enlisted he used to ignore. His father called him the night the orders came through. For the first time in Grant Mercer's life, the retired captain had nothing to say. The second wave hit Gerald Sullivan. On November 3rd, Sullivan was formally relieved of command. The official language was loss of confidence and ability to command. 7 words that translate into one finished. The relief was based on 3 findings. First, failure to enforce equal opportunity policies, as evidenced by a 28 out of 31 dismissal rate on formal complaints. Second, failure to act during a witnessed incident of officer misconduct. Third, deliberate concealment of complaint records during a pre-inspection period. The third finding was the one that buried him. When Whitman's team had opened Sullivan's locked cabinet, they found not just Hale's 3 complaints, but 14 others that had been removed from the digital tracking system and stored in physical files only. No digital trail, no accountability. Sullivan hadn't just ignored complaints, he had engineered their disappearance. Sullivan submitted his retirement paperwork within 72 hours of relief. No ceremony, no farewell dinner, no folded flag. He drove off base on a Tuesday morning in a rental car. The gate guard waved him through without a word. The third wave was quieter and larger. The Inspector General's office, acting on Brooks's recommendations, ordered a complete restructuring of Harlow's command climate infrastructure. The changes were specific, measurable, and designed to be difficult to undo. An independent equal opportunity office was established on base, reporting directly to the Regional Inspector General, not to the base commander. Complaint processing timelines were mandated. Acknowledgement within 48 hours, investigation initiation within 14 days, resolution within 60. Every complaint and its outcome would be logged in a centralized database accessible to oversight authorities. A mandatory command climate survey would be conducted every 6 months, with results reported to the Inspector General's office before they were shared with the base commander. This meant the commander could no longer control the narrative before anyone else saw it. 12 officers received formal counseling letters. 3 senior enlisted leaders were reassigned. The executive officer who had refused to give the Latino chief petty officer a complaint form was placed under investigation for obstruction. The culture didn't change overnight. Culture never does. But the architecture changed. The walls that had protected bad behavior were taken down and replaced with windows. And then there was Hale. On November 15th, Petty Officer 3rd Class Danielle Hale received a letter from the Inspector General's office. It was signed by Lauren Brooks. The letter stated that all 3 of Hale's previously dismissed complaints had been reopened, reviewed, and substantiated. The senior chief, who called her a quota hire, received a formal reprimand. The petty officers responsible for the mop incident were identified through witness interviews and disciplined. Mercer's "lowering the bar" comment was added to his Article 15 record. The letter also stated something else, something that wasn't required by regulation or protocol. Something Brooks had added in her own handwriting at the bottom of the typed page. Petty Officer Hale, you kept copies when the system wouldn't. You spoke when the room was silent. The courage you demonstrated is not a footnote in this report. It is the reason this report exists. Hale read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it, placed it in the manila folder with her complaint copies, and put the folder back in her drawer. But this time, she didn't put it under the training manuals. She put it on top. 6 months after the Harlow report, Lauren Brooks returned to Joint Base Harlow. She didn't arrive in a gray suit this time. She arrived in full dress uniform, 3 stars on each shoulder, ribbons stacked 4 rows deep, the leather notebook tucked under her arm, the same one. The gate guard recognized her before she showed her ID. He saluted so fast he nearly dropped his clipboard. The base looked the same from the outside. Same runways, same hangars, same flat Virginia land stretching to the horizon. But inside, the air was different. Not perfect, not healed, different. The new commanding officer, Captain Rita Dawson, a 26-year veteran, hand-picked by the regional commander, met Brooks at the main entrance. "General Brooks, welcome back, ma'am." "Captain Dawson, how's the climate?" Dawson didn't sugarcoat it. "Better. Not fixed. Better. The independent EO office has processed 43 complaints in 6 months. Everyone investigated, everyone answered. Some people still don't trust the system. Can't blame them." "Trust takes time," Brooks said. "Accountability takes longer." They walked through the compound together. Brooks noticed small things. A junior enlisted woman walking through a corridor without pressing herself against the wall. A mixed group of officers and enlisted sitting together in the break room, not segregated by rank and race the way they had been 6 months ago. A bulletin board near the main office with the Equal Opportunity Reporting Hotline printed in letters large enough to read from 20 feet away. Small things. But culture is made of small things. Near the end of her visit, Brooks passed the reception hall. The same room. The same marble floors. The same double doors. She paused in the doorway and looked at the spot where she had stood on October 14th. Major Whitman, walking beside her, followed her gaze. "You okay, ma'am?" Brooks looked at the floor. Somewhere on that marble, 6 months ago, a name tag had landed face up after a young lieutenant ripped it from her lapel. She could still hear the plastic hitting stone. She could still hear the laughter. She could still feel the champagne glass pressed into her hand. "I'm fine," she said. "I was just thinking." "About what, ma'am?" Brooks smiled. It was the first time Whitman had seen her smile since the inspection began. "He asked me what my rank was. And the truth is, my rank isn't what mattered that day. What mattered was that a 22-year-old petty officer had been keeping copies of complaints in a folder under her training manuals for 18 months, waiting, hoping that someone would come along who was worth handing them to." She looked at Whitman. "I didn't change, Harlow. She did. I just opened the door." They walked out of the building into the late afternoon sun. Brooks's sedan was waiting. She climbed in, set the leather notebook on the seat beside her, and closed the door. The car pulled away from Joint Base Harlow for the last time. Behind her in the enlisted barracks, Petty Officer 3rd Class Danielle Hale was getting dressed for her first day at a new assignment, Leadership Training School. She had been nominated by Captain Dawson personally. Hale zipped her bag, looked around the small room one last time, and picked up the manila folder from the top of her desk. She didn't need it anymore. The system had her copies now. She packed it anyway. Some things you keep, not because you have to, but because they remind you of the day you stopped leaving and started standing. What would you have done if you were standing in that room watching a man tear someone apart with words while everyone laughed? Would you have spoken up, or would you have looked away? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit subscribe if you believe respect isn't given by rank, it's earned by character. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Hashtag respect is earned. Hashtag justice for those unseen. Hashtag what is your rank? Hashtag stand up. No, the loudest person in the room isn't always the most powerful. Real authority doesn't announce itself. It watches. It learns. Then it moves. Respect everyone. You never know who's standing in front of you. No, the loudest person in the room isn't always the most powerful. Real authority doesn't announce itself. It watches. It learns. Then it moves. Respect everyone. You never know who's standing in front of you.